In this video, we're going to be writing custom exceptions and how to handle RESTful API exceptions. Exception handling is important part of programming as it ensures the normal flow of the program without crashing the program itself. Luckily, in Spring Boot, lots of REST API exceptions are handled automatically for us. But what if we want to write our own custom exceptions with custom messages? For that, we have something called REST controller advice that pretty much advises the controller on any exceptions. So we're going to create a new package, and let's call this package exception. And we're going to first create a new model object for handling our custom exceptions. So for that, we're going to create an error message class. And in this class, we're going to have a couple of things. We want the status code, the timestamp when the actually error happened, what the error was, and the description of that error as well. And let's use Lombok to create the constructor for us, all argument constructor. And let's create the getters as well. All right, so next we're going to create this custom exception class that where we can pass in a custom message. So we're going to call this class resource not found. And let's create the constructor for this class where we're going to take in a message. And we're going to call this super method. So super is pretty much calling the constructor of the runtime exception class. And inside the super, we're just passing in this custom message. So if you go to runtime exception class, we're pretty much calling this constructor with the super keyword. So pretty much what we're doing here is we're creating our custom resource not found exception class. And instead of using the no such element exception, we're going to replace this with resource not found exception class. So let's actually do that. All right, so that's it. Now we're going to be creating the controller exception handler class that will actually advise the controller on any REST API exceptions. So let's create that class. And we are going to annotate this with @REST controller advice. So this will advise the controller on any REST API exceptions. So the first one we're going to do is a resource not found exception. So for that, we use this annotation called @exception handler. And here we're passing in our custom resource not found exception class. And for the first one, we're going to say if let's say the employee is not found or the payroll is not found for that employee, you want to return a HTTP status code called not found. And we are going to be returning our custom object, which is the error message. And this will take in two parameters. It's going to take in the actual exception class, and the other is a web request. So any web request that came in. All right, so let's build our error message object. And let's return this message back. So one nice thing about REST controller advice is it also includes a response body for us automatically. So we don't need to convert this. It's automatically going to convert this object into a response body for us. Let's create one more exception class. So this is going to be the global exception handler. So for any sort of internal server error that happens, we should throw an error message for that. So for that, we're going to be using, we're going to follow the same structure. And instead of using resource not found exception, we're going to use the main exception class from Java language. And the response address we're going to return is, we're going to say there was an internal server error. All right, and that's pretty much it. Okay, so let's test out our custom exception class. All right, so instead of posting an employee, let's try to maybe delete an employee ID that doesn't exist. So let's try to do this. All right, so we got employee ID number 1 not found. So we got the status code return at 404, which means not found. So let's maybe try to do an update of an employee. Again, this employee doesn't exist. Same thing, we got employee ID not found. Let's maybe try to do a bad URL. So this resource shouldn't exist. So if I send this, yep, not found. So basically this resource employee 5 does not exist. So we got the correct status code as well. All right, so let's try to do one more validation. So for example, what if we want to have a validation where salary has to be greater than 0 and it has to be less than or equal to 100? We need to validate the salary information. So Spring actually comes with a really nice library called Spring Validator. And so let's add that dependency. So we're going to go to POM.xml and add this dependency. And now to do that, we're going to head over to our employee controller. we're going to say validate our employee class. And in our employee class, we're going to go to our employee class and we're going to add this method or annotation, I should say, min. So here we're going to say, you know what, the minimum salary that needs to be is 1. And if it's not 1, then throw out our message saying invalid salary. And for max salary, we're going to say exactly at max annotation. And we're going to say it has to be 100 or less. All right, so let's test this out. So let's post a salary that is 0. All right, so we got our exception. So we got internal server error. Technically, we should say it's a bad request, so we're going to see how to fix that. And let's test out the max salary, let's say 200. So over here, we got min. Okay, we got this message. So let's see if you get the max one. Yep, we got it. So let's try to clean this up. So again, we're going to head over to our controller exception handler. And we have this exception class called method argument not valid exception. So let's import that. And the response status that we want to return is bad status. And let's create this class, or this method, I should say. And we're pretty much going to follow the same format over here. So instead of getting the whole message, we just want to retrieve this part of the message. Invalid salary, we just want to retrieve this message. That's it. So we're going to get the result. And from the result, we're going to get the field. And then from that field error, we're getting the message part. All right, let's test this out. Okay, so let's try to set a salary of 0. So now we should only get invalid salary. Yep, equal to 0. And let's try to do maybe 200. Okay, so our validation is working. So this is another way of validating our fields to see if they're following the proper standards in terms of, for example, for salary, we said salary has to be between 0 and 100. Okay, so to recap, we went over how to write custom exceptions and why handling exceptions properly is very important. It ensures that the program doesn't just crash, and it also makes it user-friendly, where users can see the exact cause of error and also get a friendly, easy-to-read message. We also went over how to do custom validation, where we did an example for salary, where salary range has to be between 1 and 100. And in the next video, we'll go over Spring Security, where we're going to be creating authentication and authorization roles, where admin or owner can do all sorts of requests, such as post, put, delete, and the reader can only do GET requests. And lastly, let's push this code to Git.